Hello students, in this C# program we see how memory will be allocated in inheritance, or how memory will be allocated for the objects if we declare the object of base class and if we declare the object of derived class. Then how memory will be allocated for the derived class object and how memory will be allocated for the base class object. Now in previous video we have seen the student is my base class, and from this base class I have derived the marks class. Now inside main, if I declare the object of base class, here my base class is student. Now I am declaring here one base class object as stud is equal to new, and here I am declaring only the default constructor inside student. So default constructor will be called and values will be initialized accordingly to this stud object. Now here I am declaring s1 as a derived object, and I am passing some arguments. These arguments are going towards this going to the parameterized constructor of my derived class, and this is my parameterized constructor. So accordingly values will be initialized. Now how much memory will be allocated for student object? Here my student object is of my base class object, and now s1 is my derived class object, but as there is inheritance, we can store, or we can add the properties of base class into a derived class. So how memory will be allocated for derived object and base class object? See, we will see here by debugging our program, and we see the locals window how memory will be allocated for such objects. Means how memory will be allocated for base class object and derived class object, or how much memory will be allocated. So I am putting breakpoint here at the first line of my program, or first line of my main function. I am putting one breakpoint, and I am running this program, or I am debugging this program line by line. So what happens inside the locals window? We check the memory allocation inside locals window. So I am opening here locals window to see the memory, how my variables allocated the memory. We will see inside this locals window. So I am opening here locals window. Now I am opening this locals window. We will see here. Here my student refers to the null and s1 refers to the null. This means memory still memory is not allocated for the student object and this s1 object. Before allocating the memory, my objects refers to the null. Right, now if I press the function key F11 and go towards the next, then my default constructor for this student class will be called. See here, my default constructor, my control goes towards the default constructor of our base class, and here this refers to the stud object. Means this pointer referring to my current object, and my current object is here s1. I am creating s1 object and instantiate, right? So my constructor will be called while we are creating our object. If there is any constructor, then it will be called, and here my default constructor is called. And now if I press the F11 key and move towards forward, then here we see name refers to the null, because we are not storing the name value still, but roll number assigned Here after pressing F11, here we see roll number value change from 0 to 100, and after this execution name is equal to Ramesh, name refers to the Ramesh string here. Now inside this current object I am storing the values as Ramesh and 100 by using the default constructor, and if I am moving towards the next inside my program, now if we see my student object refer to the memory where Ramesh and 100 values are stored. So my student object allocated the memory and how much memory it allocated. It allocated the memory for storing the roll number and name. Means 2 block memory allocated here. For first block, 100 will be stored inside first block, and inside the second block name will be stored, or name has stored here. Now if we move towards the next parameterized constructor for my derived class will be called, and by using that parameterized constructor, but before calling the parameterized constructor, default constructor will be called here. For this, now my this refers to the marks object, means S1 object. My current object is S1 and I am creating S1 object, so my this pointer referring towards the S1 object, and inside S1 how much memory it will allocate. Now only name and roll number is there inside this object, this pointer. Now we go towards the marks object or marks constructor, and by using this marks we are allocating or we are initializing the marks. Now see here inside the S1 memory there is base, and inside base there are name and roll number values, and in itself and its values. S1's itself values are physics, chemistry, maths, and base also stored inside S1 memory. Means there is memory allocation for a derived object is base plus itself. Itself means its own properties are physics, chemistry, maths, and apart from these own properties, base properties also stored inside this derived object. So this I want to say, or I want to clear, inside a derived object there is base memory also included. Not only the derived memory, but base memory is also there. So in this way S1 object allocated the memory for itself, also for base values also. So if I refer or if I display the marks, or if I call the method of marks or get data, then my control goes to this get data method, and I am storing the values of roll number and name as 12 and Archana. And if I go towards next, then if I see the values of S1, then I am getting the values, changed values, because just I have called get data, and through get data I am changing the values of S1. Now S1 is my derived object, still S1 having roll number and name, right? Inside, if we see inside the marks, there are only 3 data members. Then how we can store the roll number and name values by using the derived class object? Because there is inheritance, so inside S1 memory there is memory for roll number and name as well. So this is the memory structure of derived object. Now by using the display marks we can display all the values on console. So we go, control goes to the display marks, then display, then again we move towards next, and we see the output like this. So what is I am trying to tell you in this program, how memory will be allocated for base class and derived class, plus how constructor calling sequence is there. If there is inheritance, we use or you if you use inheritance in your program and there are constructors inside base class as well as derived class, then how constructors will be called? What is the sequence of calling of constructors? Before calling the derived constructor, base class constructor will be called, and then derived constructor will be called. So this is the concept behind memory allocation of base class object and derived class object. Inside a derived object, base properties also added. So again we see the memory inside student, name and roll number values are stored, but inside S1 is of our derived class object, and we are deriving this marks class from student. So student properties are also added inside this derived class object. See here, name and roll number are also added inside our derived class object, where the roll number and name are not the exact or direct properties of our derived class marks. Our derived class marks having only the properties chemistry, maths and physics. These properties are of base class properties and they are inherited inside this class. So in this way, memory will be allocated. There are maybe multi-level inheritance. From marks also we derive another class. So all these student and marks properties will be added inside the new derived class. So in this way, memory will be allocated.